So I think everybody knows I am a brain aficionado. I run a lot of brain-based courses like neuroscience for yoga teachers, neuroscience and trauma, not to mention that in the Minded Institute Sloan course, I do many different modules where I teach about neuroscience. And so I thought I'd introduce you to some of my very good friends, the brain structures, over the course of a few weeks, maybe months. So today we're going to start at the base of the brain. We call that the hindbrain, with my favorite structure, the cerebellum. Anybody whose favorite structure is the pons and the medulla oblongata, and today, the other two structures, somebody came to me and said, no, the pons is better. You're just wrong. The cerebellum is the best structure in the hindbrain. So why do I love it? Okay, let's start. The cerebellum, it's a pretty big structure. Now I know that the fact that something is big shouldn't make it good. I mean, I happen to be little, but I just like that it makes up 10% of the brain. And really intriguingly, it has about 50% of the neurons in the brain, even though it's only 10% of the brain size. So why is that? Well, because it has teeny tiny neurons. And this relates to what it does. So the cerebellum is very much involved in motor activity. It doesn't initiate movement, right? That happens around the primary motor cortex, which is further forward, but it does support accuracy and fine-tuning of movement. Not to mention that the cerebellum encodes pathways after we've automated a movement. In fact, it does support the automation of movement so that we don't have to engage in planning to do anything more. That's like when you're a bit clumsy doing your dance step and suddenly you do it without thought, right? That's because it became encoded in the cerebellum. In addition to this, it actually speaks to what is balance. The cerebellum supports us in physical balance, so in asana, when we're coming into tree or Garuda asana or anything else like that, we're very much relying on the cerebellum, but also emotional balance. Having a more robust cerebellum is concomitant with more psychological balance. And at Duke University, one of the top universities in the United States, they've been looking at the cerebellum's role in mental health for years, finding that people with depression and PTSD actually have less volume. So what can we do about this? Okay, let's put some pieces together and make the structure even more interesting. So there is a psychiatrist, Adele Diamond, at the University of Toronto. She's also a researcher, and for a long time, like more than 20 years, she's been looking at the crosstalk between the cerebellum and another structure we'll get to at an additional time. You can guess that it's the front of the brain since I'm making this action, the prefrontal cortex. Very much for thinking about how we do an action, for planning it. So, if she has shown through her research, if the volume of one or both of these structures is not large, as we are having crosstalk between the two, engaging in this pathway, we can actually increase the volume of both structures. So this has a direct relevance to yoga. It suggests that if we want to enhance this pathway, thereby also the volume of both these structures, and by the way, the prefrontal cortex is involved in innovative thinking, not just planning lots of stuff, and smaller in populations with mental health disorders, we need to engage in asanas that we're not familiar with, or sequences that are new. I'm not saying do that all the time, but if you are wanting to enhance this pathway, then go ahead and start doing things that you're not familiar with. Sometimes I even recommend to clients to go to something like Zumba, where you're doing a lot of new movements that you're not familiar with and feel a bit clumsy, in order to heighten the activation of this pathway. So I hope you also have a possibly kindling love affair with the cerebellum, back of the brain, and let me know what other structures you'd like to hear about next.